Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and today we're going to be talking about Nintendo's plan for fiscal year 2021. Their current fiscal year for 2020 is about to end this March with the release of Monster Hunter Rise. That will be the last big major release for the Switch in fiscal year 2020. And then April of 2021 will mark the beginning of Nintendo's next fiscal year, and that will close March 2022. We have some ideas in terms of what Nintendo will be releasing during this time, but there's still a lot of months that are pretty vacant in terms of what's going to be coming out. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on Nintendo's overall plan with their software releases and maybe a Switch revision for fiscal year 2021. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now before we jump into things, let me quickly mention my social media. You may be seeing a few different things here on screen. You can check those all out. They are linked in the description below. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here on YouTube, you can subscribe. And if you would like to see most of my content, maybe even hit that notification bell. And if you're feeling very gracious, maybe also leave a like. But now let's actually get into the topic for this video. What is Nintendo's plan? Well, this is what we know so far. We know that in April, we are getting new Pokemon Snap. And then in May, we are getting Miitopia. In June, we're getting Mario Golf. And then in July, we're getting Skyward Sword HD. So what you may be noticing is that Nintendo has at least one big published Nintendo game coming out for the month. And what's interesting about this is that this is not even the biggest time of the year. The biggest time of the year is actually the second half of 2021. That's where usually, historically speaking at least, we see the bigger, more hype, more exciting releases. So if you think the beginning of Nintendo's fiscal year is not too bad, then in my opinion, for most Nintendo fans, the second half of 2021 and just the final 2/3 of Nintendo's fiscal year are going to be really, really good. But while I'm saying that, there's definitely a lot of people who are concerned because we got that February Nintendo Direct and they talked about a few 2022 games and they made no mention of what's coming out between August and December. There was nothing at all. But we do know some things, especially after the Pokemon Presents. So before we get to Pokemon, there are a couple games we do know about for 2022. That's Splatoon 3 and Triangle Strategy. Now, those two games are very exciting and I am looking forward to them, but because they didn't say early 2022, I'm not thinking we'll be seeing them by this fiscal year. I think we're gonna have to wait until later into 2022. I could see Splatoon 3 coming out around the summertime for 2022. If it comes out sooner, great, but I'm just not expecting that at this point. But there is a game that was announced recently that I do think will make it out by the end of the fiscal year, and that's Pokemon Legends Arceus. So this is a big open world Pokemon game that Game Freak is focusing on here. They actually outsourced Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. They've never done that before. They are focusing on this open world Pokemon game. Now what's interesting about this is that they confirmed that this will be coming out early 2022. We've actually never seen this before from Pokemon Company. Usually, when they make an announcement, it comes out within a year. This is going to take a little bit longer, but I don't think it's going to take that much longer because, as I said, their announcement to release windows are very short. So while this announcement to release windows definitely going to be longer than most of them, I don't think it's going to be that much longer. That's just not how Game Freak and Pokemon Company operate. So given that, and that this is coming out early 2022, I feel like the best time for this game to come out would actually be March 2022. We have actually seen recently that there is a bit of a pattern for major releases to be coming out around this time to close out the fiscal year. This very month we're getting Monster Hunter Rise, a very big Switch exclusive. Nintendo's been helping Capcom to really advertise and push this game. They definitely paid for it to be a time release. This is a big deal, and they are using this game to close out fiscal year of 2020 really strong. Last year, to close out the fiscal year, they had Animal Crossing New Horizons, and we all know how well that game has sold, or well if you don't, it's already the second best-selling game on Switch and it hasn't even been out for a year. The point is, we are starting to see a bit of a trend here in terms of big releases coming out in March. Now, we don't always get a big major release like these in March, but we have seen it happen a few times before. For example, Breath of the Wild on the Switch itself coming out in March of 2017. So considering that and this early 2022 release date and how Game Freak and Pokemon Company tend to sort of be with their announcements to release windows, March 2022 makes a lot of sense in my opinion for Pokemon Legends Arceus. And this is really important because if this game is coming out then, things will have to be spaced out a fair bit. For example, I don't think Breath of the Wild 2 will be coming out in February. They're going to space things out a little bit. Now you might say, oh, hold up, we've seen Nintendo release big releases right next to each other, sometimes even in the same month. Yes, but that's usually during the holidays, not in the beginning of the year. It's a little different. And on the note of Breath of the Wild 2, I actually recently made a video talking all about my prediction for a Switch revision and Breath of the Wild 2 to come out together by the end of the year. So if you want more details on why I think those are happening, I have a whole other video specifically for that, and my gamble if I'm wrong, all in that video, so definitely check that out after this one. It'll be in the end screen and also linked in the description below. But regardless, the positioning of Pokemon Legends Arceus I do think has implications for other big releases like Breath of the Wild 2 and the Switch revision, which we'll get to a little bit later into the video. But looking at what we know so far for fiscal year 2021, we have Snap in April, Miitopia in May, Golf in June, Skyward Sword in July, and then August, September, October, November, December, January, and February are kind of unknown. We're assuming Legends comes out in March 2022, but I feel pretty good about that. So let's say, obviously it's speculation, but let's say that's how things actually pan out. What will we get in the rest of those months in between? Well, we have seen a few rumors that I think are fairly credible. They're coming from places like Emily Rogers and Zippo and Nate Drake, people who have had a history of having insider information and are pretty consistent with what they said, so there's definitely a lot of credibility there. So they're saying that games like this could be coming in the second half of 2021. Donkey Kong, a Fire Emblem remake, a new Metroid game, potentially a Mario Party game, some Zelda remasters. Those are all being mentioned right now, and I do think a lot of them make sense. And we've talked about a lot of these on the channel already, but the point I'm trying to get at here is that if we assume these rumors are true, we definitely have a decent understanding of what Nintendo's lineup could be. But before we pinpoint exactly when I think these games could be coming out, let's first talk a little about Nintendo's summer. I think this summer we will be seeing a big E3-like event for Nintendo. We have witnessed the return of the General Nintendo Direct. The last time we had a General Nintendo Direct besides the one in February was September of 2019. 2020 was a big weird aberration, not the norm. It seems now that in 2021 Nintendo and other companies are returning to a norm. In other words, if you go before 2020, the expectation was every single year that we would get a big summer event, presentation, a direct. So I'm thinking, yes, this summertime we will be getting some sort of direct. Considering what we know so far about Nintendo's lineup, it does make sense to think that we will be seeing a presentation around June. Think about it. We got a direct in February and all we knew about was Monster Hunter Rise coming in March and Snap in April. That was it. So we were getting close to that time we wouldn't know about games, and Nintendo does need to make the announcements a few months in advance, so we got a direct in February. Once we get to June, Nintendo will need to start making more announcements for things to come out beyond July. So I'm thinking that for August, late August, I think we'll be seeing the release of a new Metroid game to tie into the Metroid 35th anniversary. Now some people may be scratching their heads sort of wondering why didn't Nintendo just announce Metroid during the direct? Well, my personal belief here is that they were saving a big Metroid reveal for E3 time. Why? Because there is a history of backlash when Nintendo reveals a smaller scale, lesser ambitious Metroid kind of game. Now this isn't to slight whatever Metroid game we're going to be getting in August. I actually think it's going to be a 2D side-scrolling Metroid 5, and I think it's going to be very exciting. It's going to be a really cool game. But it's not a big, open, ambitious, first-person Metroid Prime 4 kind of game, right? What I'm alluding to here is that around this E3 time, I do believe we'll have a bit of a Metroid blowout. They will reveal this Metroid 5 game to come out this year, I'm thinking late August, but they'll also give us a teaser for Metroid Prime 4, and while they're at it, they may also confirm the existence of Prime Trilogy, but I'm not thinking Prime Trilogy will be coming out this year. I think that'll be coming out later into 2022, potentially January or February, so it might fit into the fiscal year, potentially. But really what I'm thinking right now, what I want to focus on right now, is that we are at least getting Metroid 5, a side-scrolling Metroid game made by Mercury Steam, this year, and I'm thinking late August is that time, and then Nintendo will make those other big Metroid announcements at E3, so we have at least other Metroid things to look forward to afterwards while we enjoy Metroid 5. Going beyond that, I do think September could be a good time for us to maybe see that Fire Emblem remake. Fire Emblem remakes are pretty common to happen in between major Fire Emblem games. We usually see a couple of them per platform for Nintendo systems. Given that we got Three Houses in 2019, it wouldn't shock me if they use the Three Houses engine or adapted version of that to pump out a remake of an older Fire Emblem game in 2 years. Definitely possible, and September I think would be a good time for that. Going into the October, November, December months, those are the months where I think we could be seeing the biggest releases of the year. If you look at previous years, for example, 2017, we saw Mario Odyssey in October, Xenoblade 2 in December, and on the 3DS there was a new Pokemon game coming out in November. 2018 we saw Smash and Pokemon Let's Go. 2019 we saw Sword and Shield and Luigi's Mansion 3. There's definitely going to be some big releases, and if we assume that this Switch revision is coming out by the end of the year, and based off the Bloomberg report I believe that to be the case, they're going to want to have a good amount of games to come out around that time to support the release for this system. So in my opinion, I'm definitely expecting a very strong lineup. Now when we see the Switch revision, that's hard to say. Usually you see big consoles come out around November, but with revisions it's a little bit different. Nintendo kind of releases them at random times of the year. But at the same time, I do also think that they are sort of trying to tie in Breath of the Wild 2 with the release for this system, and usually big 3D Zelda games come out around that November time, so it's definitely a possibility. Now, the one wrench in this plan is that historically speaking, we've seen Pokemon games come out around this time. Not always, but definitely most of the time Pokemon games, the mainline Pokemon games, come out in November. So given that Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were confirmed for late 2021, that makes sense. But I'm actually kind of thinking that maybe we could see these Pokemon games a little bit sooner. Hard to say for sure, I feel like these months are kind of interchangeable here, but we have seen other Pokemon games come out in October before, like X and Y for example, and considering that Pokemon Legends Arceus is coming out early 2022, they may want to space things out a little bit more, not to mention this is an outsourced, chibi style remake for Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I don't mean that as a slight of the game, but I simply am saying that the ambition for this game is a little bit more on the conservative side, so perhaps pushing it slightly away from that November time period and it coming out in October, which is still a strong sales period by the way, might make sense, especially if they want to space themselves away from the big release of this new 4K capable Switch alongside Breath of the Wild 2. And while we're on the note of October, it wouldn't shock me if we see another game come out around then, maybe a Mario Party game for example. That's another one of the rumored games. If we don't see Mario Party, maybe we see that Donkey Kong game we've been hearing about. That's another possibility. Or maybe this Donkey Kong game is saved until later, perhaps December or even beyond that. Obviously this is all hard to say. But I definitely think there's a pretty good chance we'll be seeing Breath of the Wild 2 and the Switch revision coming out in November. Maybe October, so Nintendo has more months to release other games to support that system. For example, this Donkey Kong game I've been mentioning, but there's a few other possibilities. So one option is Bayonetta 3. We've known about this game for a while. It's been in development since 2017, like Breath of the Wild 2. It is supposed to be a big, ambitious game, the kind of game that might look pretty good in 4K and would definitely go over a long ways towards further showing off the capabilities of this new Switch. So they may be saving that as well, potentially. Another big release we can maybe see around this time is a Monolith Soft game. Monolith Soft is responsible for the Xenoblade games, and if you haven't noticed lately, for Smash Bros, they've been definitely using the Sakurai Presents and the Pyramith reveal to really bring a lot more awareness to the Xenoblade series. It's very interesting to me. Considering that Monolith Soft has been developing multiple projects since 2017, and we know Xenoblade's an ongoing series and they're definitely hard marketing and pushing Xenoblade right now with Smash Brothers, it wouldn't shock me if another Xenoblade announcement is around the corner. Potentially, there could be a Monolith Soft game coming out this December. Even if it's not a Xenoblade game, it could be something else. December we have seen been a month for some pretty big hardcore games. 2018 was Smash Ultimate, 2017 it was Xenoblade 2. So for sure that's a possibility, especially considering that we could be getting a Switch revision this year that has some pretty nice graphical capabilities, so they may want another game on top of Breath of the Wild 2 that appeals to that hardcore market that looks pretty awesome, which is why I also mentioned Bayonetta 3. Obviously, these are all possibilities. But I think the overall point here is that there are a lot of games that can maybe come out during this period, and there's no way all of them will. And I wouldn't say that Bayonetta 3 or a Donkey Kong game would come out in January. I feel like they might say that for a little bit later into 2022 if they don't make it in for 2021. But it also wouldn't shock me if we see some other games come out in that January, February time. So for example, maybe that Prime trilogy they squeeze into January, perhaps because they're thinking that Prime 4 will be ready for holiday 2022. Wouldn't that be exciting? They could release 3 Metroid games in a 1.5-year window. That'd be crazy. Maybe I'm being a little bit too optimistic there, but I'm just saying it wouldn't be out of the question, especially considering that they have this new Switch revision. Perhaps the premise of having Metroid in 4K would be a really good idea for Nintendo, which is why they might position a Prime trilogy around January, just a couple months after its release. So, you know, maybe that could be happening. Another possibility for maybe February could be the release of some Zelda remasters, maybe Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD. Those games are rumored. Now, some people speculate that maybe we will get those games during the holidays and that Breath of the Wild 2 could be coming out later, but because of Pokemon Legends Arceus and this Switch revision supposedly coming out by the end of the year, I really feel like it makes sense for Breath of the Wild 2 to come out for the holidays. And again, I go into a lot more detail about this in my previous video, which you can check out after this one, which should be about now because I am pretty much done. There is a lot of possibilities here. Not all the games I mentioned will be coming out during this period, but some of them for sure will, I think, and I think there's a lot of options, and it's all really, really exciting. Nintendo has a lot of good games in development, and there's probably a few that we have no idea about that Nintendo will surprise us with. So there's definitely some great things to look forward to, regardless of what actually happens. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think Nintendo's plan for fiscal year 2021 will pan out similar to what I'm thinking, or do you guys have different ideas? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.